we're here to tell you.
So
From the ripped ass. Just a piece of
no
shit.
good can come from it.
No one likes us.
I've got the one and only Cody McCarthy, a fine Irishman, known as the Wolfman to the Gimmick Gang, an all-around stand-up dude. How you doing there, Cody?
I'm good. How are you, my brother?
I'm doing great, brother. Doing great. Thank you for doing this.
Of course. I'm honored.
I appreciate that. I'm going to go a little all over the place. I try to do things linearly sometimes, but this time I'm just going to jump all over because you've got a rich story to tell, whether you know it or not. So let's. I debated where to start with this story. Every time I've been writing these questions, but let's start with your pops. So
Okay.
Your pops is he's from Minnesota, is it?
Yeah, he was born and raised in Minnesota. Yeah.
Okay, Minneapolis, yeah.
Yeah, like Plymouth. Yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly where he was raised, but yeah, like in the Twin Cities area for sure. Like,
sure.
My aunt still lives by Plymouth, Minnesota, which is near St. Paul, so that whole area.
Okay, right on. So, one thing that we talked yesterday a little bit. I am super jazzed on this band Gypsy. Now, is this the first band that he got involved, like that got him on the road to doing what he does?
Yeah, they were a Minnesota-based band. Still, the people that are still around, I still talk to. The crazy story about Gypsy is, when Bob Dylan did that album, I think Blood on the Track. I'm not a Bob Dylan mark, but like the Bob Dylan album, Blood on the Tracks or whatever it's called. There's a story, you can Google it. Like, he was recording it in New York and just didn't like the vibe. Was like, this fucking thing I'm not feeling it. And heard Gypsy, and that became the background band for that one Bob Dylan record. And that's kind of where they logged, that's where they kind of jumped off. And then they took my dad and they all went in a bus and drove to California and became the Whiskey A Go-Go's house band in the early 70s.
Right. So wait a minute. So they actually did play. They were like the Funk Brothers from Motown for Bob Dylan.
For just that one record. Yeah.
So it wasn't just inspiration. He actually said, "You come and fucking play on this record."
Yeah, like the conga. Like, I don't know the whole band, but I know the percussion was the Gypsy percussionist. I think one of the guitar, maybe the bass player, but like the backing part of the rhythm section, I think, of Gypsy was part of that record because Bob Dylan had heard them or saw them live and was like, "That's the vibe I'm going for."
Yeah, I mean, I dig it, dude. When you start getting into that weird, I mean, the ultimate for me from back then is Creedence, but you start getting into that weird, doing something witchy Charles Manson vibe, and I'm all about it. I really like this Gypsy band, and I wasn't hip to them until a week ago when you said something.
Well, it's crazy. Like, that's the first band my dad worked for, and that's legitimately the last band my dad worked for. Like, my dad did their like Midwest tour still, like, to this, before he passed, and then he went to Arizona to go see. My dad's best friend was Chris Nicks, who's Stevie Nicks' brother.
Right.
So my dad was in Arizona visiting him when he had a stroke, and then Stevie, thank God, was like, had a house in LA, but was like, "Hey, you can live at my house, like there's always a house person there." And, so he would kind of go back and forth between Stevie and Chris's house. And that's kind of where he ultimately passed. But the last band he like toured with, in his old age was Gypsy.
That's crazy. So do you happen to know, I mean, that's kind of an amazing, like, Disney level beginning and end. That's really wild. So, do you know how that came about? Him getting involved with Gypsy? Were they just friends of his?
Yeah, they were just friends. Like, when my dad was in the Navy, and so when he got home from the Navy, I think he was just like, but he was a rocker and he was a good looking dude and just kind of like hanging out at the bars. And he was one of those guys, whenever we drive, he would have the egg shaker. I don't know if you know that percussion thing, but like
I do.
Anytime we would drive, that's all he would do. So I think he was into music, and he, I think, was probably hung out with one of the dudes at Gypsy one night and told him that, he was kind of like looking for something to do. And I think it just kind of happened organically. And he became like in probably 10 years ago. Well, 10 years ago, my dad and Gypsy also the same year, they both got inducted into the Minnesota Rock and Country Hall of Fame. But my dad was the first production person to ever like not producer, not musician, but the first ever on the production side of like putting stage shows together to be inducted. And then the next year was Don Forte, who's one of my dad's best friends, who did all Linda Rodstedts and Eagles and all them. So yeah, my dad's in the Minnesota Rock and Country Hall of Fame. I have his plaque. When he passed, I was able to get his plaque and stuff.
Sure.
So it's pretty awesome.
That's awesome, dude. That's incredible.
Speaking of Charles Manson, though, real quick, my
Sure.
dad was. I told OG this too. My dad was doing acid with Jim Messina in a VW bus in the house behind the Manson murders. So when the Manson murders happened, they ran by my dad. He saw them run by. He didn't know what they were. He was detained by the FBI for 4.5 hours because they were basically at that time picking up anyone with long hair.
Of
and
course.
My dad was in a VW bus tripping on acid with Jim Messina. So yeah.
Wow, dude, that's a heavy break. Oh
Yeah.
my god. 4.5 hours doesn't seem too bad. I mean,
right? Yeah, I think they
still
realized pretty quick he was just high and had nothing to do with it.
no, that's just a long hair with a mustache and a VW bus. We're good.
Exactly.
So, Gypsy. So they end up moving out to the West Coast to LA. They 1969 rolls around. This is, I assume, right after they get there, give or take, and they become the house band for the Whiskey.
Yes.
No, at this point, your pops. You've got this great Instagram. It's TPM Tour Stories. Is that right?
It's my dad's initials. Yeah.
Right, TPM Tour
Stories,
Stories, which, by the way, everybody listening, watching, whatever, check that out. It's pretty fucking rad. All the memorabilia. I'm glad that he saved these things.
Yeah, crazy that he did.
Yeah, it's really cool to see. So 1969, they're in Hollywood, and they become the house band for the Whiskey, which is cool as fuck. But I always took him for being kind of a road dog. This is a stationary, gig.
Right.
So is he managing them? What is he doing?
With Gypsy, he was straight up managing them also. Like their one roadie and the guy that like took care of their stuff.
Right.
And I think that's where he was kind of going. And what happened was I think while they were doing the house band stuff, they had it pretty set up. And I think then it became like War came calling and Seals and Crofts came calling and saw my dad and liked what they did. And Gypsy was one of those bands in that era that if you were a musician, Gypsy was the band that never made it out of all the bands, but they were your favorite band's favorite band. Like plain and simple. Like if you would have asked in 75, there's probably articles like, "Oh, Jackson Browne, who's your favorite band that you've seen?" Gypsy probably be named up. Like they were those people.
Right. As far as American artists, yeah, for sure. Like I listened to a couple of records by this band and went, "This is fucking rad." And you can hear, because I looked up, of course I'm a fucking weirdo and I look up dates. When did the record come out? When this and I'm like,
Right.
Oh, okay. So that's why I can hear the influence of this band on Bob Dylan, and I can hear it on, even Chicago, which we'll get into in a minute. You know what I mean? Like you can hear this sound that clearly other people took a little bit of paid a little homage to, if you will.
Right. Yeah. They were just a band that didn't make it.
Right. So speaking of Chicago, so your ma is from Illinois, right?
Correct. Yeah, Chicago. Yeah.
And I've heard you say numerous times, and I know you did an interview recently. I did watch it right before this, and I had to adjust my questions. I probably should have watched it right when you sent it to me. But so your mom moves out here with the band Chicago from Chicago.
Correct. Yes.
So then how is she involved in the music industry? How does she, and then eventually, how does she meet your pops?
So she, I think, just ended up being really good friend. My mom is Greek, and her mom ruled the house with an iron fist, kind of, and my mom at 21 was trying to break free and get out. So she was going to clubs, and mom was, like very beautiful, very like that era of beauty. And I think she just saw Chicago was an up and coming band in Chicago, and she became friends with. She really came close with Terry, the guitar player, Terry Kath, and
Mhm.
Terry and when they were moving to California, Terry and his sister invited my mom, and my mom and all the wives of Chicago and Terry's sister, they gave basically to get them out of their chest. They bought them a fucking boutique on Melrose, and they sold clothes, and they were up in Wonderland Ranch and all doing all like the Laurel Canyon type shit. And yeah, my mom was just kind of there, and my mom then got a job at the Whiskey through Chicago and was like a go-go dancer in the
Right.
cages thing, and then also was bartending a little bit and doing all that. And I think she met my dad basically through there. Like someone set them up. Someone's like, Tim, I think you'd really like this girl. So
So she's working there, but he's managing the house band that's there. That makes
right, but
makes perfect
yeah.
sense.
Yeah. So, but I don't even think they met there. It was almost a setup. Like my mom told me the story that my dad picked her up for their first date on a Friday, and she was like, "Look, it's gonna gross you out." But I was already like 23 when she told me this. She goes, he picked me up on a Friday, and we left the house on Monday. Like that's just how it went.
Yeah, I mean, that's grown folks shit. That's what folks
Exactly.
do.
Especially in the early 70s.
Sure, sure. So, um, so then, this is so I'm dying to know. Maybe a lot of people that I mean, we've talked for over the years, but I don't know. It's driving me nuts. Where does the nickname Tip come from for your
So
pops?
you know, he so his middle name is Patrick.
Right.
So I think just it was one of those things. Like I think it was a Navy thing. Like it was they didn't want to call him McCarthy, and Tim. I think there was a lot of Tims, so they basically were like TIP, like
Tim Patrick
and
McCarthy. Tip.
yeah. So they were
Got
just
it.
Tip, and then they started calling him Young Tip, and I don't, because he was always, I guess younger on tours. Like he was when he was tour managing, he was always the young one on the group, So
Right.
yeah.
So that's yeah. Side note, fun fact: my middle name is Patrick as well.
Oh, nice. That's
Look,
awesome.
we was talking about these fucking handsome Irishmen earlier. You know what I mean?
Yes, there you go.
So, so another thing I noticed is that your pops, I mean, you run a tattoo shop. We'll get into that in a few minutes, but your pops had a couple tattoos. Do you know what he had tattooed? I'm dying to know what that tattoo on his right arm is.
Yeah, so he only had the one tattoo, and
Oh, okay.
it was a got in the Navy, and it was the devil with the pitchfork, like
Oh,
a
okay.
red devil. And it was funny. He remembered who did the tattoo, and I can't remember who did it, but I remember when he came to visit me at work, I introduced him to Mark Mahoney, my boss, and
Right.
Mark was fascinated with the tattoo and knew exactly who did it. Like, so my dad got it from a legit, like, salty old tattoo artist kind of dude. So,
Right.
yeah.
Right. And Mark is a student of tattooing. Like he's that guy. I mean, I know the guy's story. I've never met him personally. I've since I've been a kid, being an Irish skinhead from up just slightly north of LA. I've always wanted to go into that shop. Um, I don't know Mark, but I know about him, and I know that he's maybe the coolest person that ever lived.
Yeah, he really is.
B, I want to be him when I grow up still.
Yeah.
And C, that that guy has a wealth of knowledge about tattooing that most motherfuckers could never understand.
Oh, it's crazy. And even when you look at him, he's like so put together. His nickname is Slacks because he's always wearing dressed up. But in all honesty, like before he moved out here, his best friend was Johnny Thunders. Like he was a punk rock dude. He was
Right.
doing, tattooing was illegal in Boston, so he was doing it at Hell's Angels clubs and all the biker bars and backdoor type stuff. And then he moved out here and went straight to the Pike and worked near Rick Walters and all that stuff. So it was like, yeah, he's knowledgeable, but not just on that, like cars and like he's like a man's
Mhm.
man, like cars and like old
Yeah.
school music, like doo-wop. And but he a lot of people don't know, but Mark was the dude who drew the eagle for the Fear. The Fear logo is Mark's drawing.
I'm hip. I know
Yeah.
a lot of people aren't, but I am. And like that shit, that's one of the reasons that I became, once I started getting tattooed and understanding who tattoos and why these names, why I know certain names in the tattoo game, and being an old punk rock head, I like that. I started paying more attention to Mark at that point.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, like it's crazy. Like we used to have. I'm sure you heard in the other one, but like we used to have Lee Ving come in every Saturday and just sing songs just by himself with a harmonica and just sometimes do Fear songs, but sometimes do some weird Italian opera shit, like just crazy voice and just. But that's people would do that for Mark.
Right. That's
You know?
amazing. I mean, and that's another thing is that I've heard that the presence of people like Lee Ving and Mark is intimidating because of who they are, but they're like the nicest guys in the entire
Right.
world.
Well, Vinny, when one of the tours Vinny was out here for, I was at work and he was across the street at the Rainbow. So he came in and Mark was in the middle of a tattoo and I was like, oh, Mark, this is Vinny. And Mark stopped tattooing, stood up, took off his gloves, did the whole, like talked to Vinny for a minute. And I remember Vinny leaving and being like, dude, that was the most amazing thing that he just stopped tattooing to like give respect. And, Mark gave him like, 15, 20 minutes of talk time. But it's like, that's who Mark is, especially if you come in through me. Like Mark will always be like, and Mark does that with everybody. Like Mark's just that dude. Like he really
Sure.
is.
Well,
like we have, there was a story, like one of his favorite stories is, he used to tattoo Suge Knight, like all the Suge stuff. And one time
Sure.
Suge called him up and was like, hey, Mark, we're going to fly all of like the crew. We're going to fly to Chicago. Like, can you come with us and tattoo on the private plane? Like, we got you. And so Mark calls, his wife and it's like, hey, I'm going to do this. And she's like, all right. And he's like, he's on this private plane. He's the only white dude on there. They're eating lobster. They're having a grand old time. And he's like, kind of like paying attention. And he's like, wait a second. Shouldn't we have landed already? And Suge starts laughing. He goes, oh, man. We know your wife wouldn't have said yes, but we're taking you to New Orleans. And they landed in New Orleans and he was stuck there for like a week with them. It was so funny, the story. Like there's some good like Suge Knight. Like I have a Suge Knight story that is personal for me. Like he would come in a lot. This was like towards the tail end a little bit before all his drama. And he was coming in a lot, but I didn't really know him that way. Like I would say hi. And I knew him because my buddy used to work for Death Row. So I would see him at parties and he's intimidating. Like I'm not trying to I wasn't trying to talk to him really. And
that's a big dude, man. That's a big, dangerous dude. Yeah.
And then the stories perceive him. And then, but he was always, when you walk it, that's the thing, no matter who you are, no matter how gangster you are, no matter what crew you're from, you walk into Shamrock, you kind of tuck your chain a little bit. You respect the authority of Mark. Like you're like, I'm not going to act up here.
Which is just purely friendly authority. It's like, yo, man, don't mind your fucking business. Settle
Mark's
out.
never yelled. He's never But so Suge comes in one night to get this girl tattooed, and it was like I just got married, like probably a year and a half, 2 years in, and I'm sitting there, and Freddie Negretti's the tattoo artist, and his son, rest in peace, Boo Boo, was there, and Suge Knight's there with two of his boys, and then this chick. The chick happened to be a stripper, and he was getting her a tattoo, like whatever, and someone spilled a drink, so it's like 3:30 in the morning. We're actually closed. I'm pissed off because I'm like trying to go home. So I'm on my hands and knees on the shop floor wiping up this mess, and I hear this girl say, "I feel like fucking somebody up," and I'm kind of like half paying attention. She goes, "I'm gonna fuck up that white boy," and so my ears perked up, and I'm like, "What?" And that girl jumped on my back like she was about to sock, like I was a horse, and was lifted up to sock me, and I turned around. And I looked at her, I said, you fucking do that, I'm going to knock you out. And I turned over to Suge, and I was like, Suge, get this fucking bitch off me. I'm not the one, dude. And Suge was like, get over here, and like handle that business. Suge, I didn't work the next day. Suge came in the next day and told Mark, was like, hey, man, that dude you have working for you, Cody, I like that dude. No one jailed at me like that. And after that, he was the greatest. Like I was driving in Glendale one day with Maddie, and I was taking this alley into this apartment to go, where I was living, and all of a sudden I hear Cody Mack and like really loud and booming, and I stop, and it's just in the alley. He's like, yo, and he comes in the car and he's like talking to me. He's like, oh, I should take you guys to dinner. And he's like playing with Maddie, and like he was like the nicest dude in the world. And when he got shot at the Key Club, he came into our shop to clean himself up. Like he's like we're that he's that guy. Like
Yeah, the
and I know a lot
Key
of
Club's
people hate
not
him.
far from the
Right
shop.
across the street. It was
Yeah.
now it's 1-0,
That's-
but yeah.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So
That's
yeah. You
that's
never know
heavy.
what's gonna happen at Shamrock.
I mean, you never know what's going to happen in LA for sure.
Right, exactly.
So, back to your pops a little bit. Um, I mean, there is the list of bands he worked with is extensive to say the least. I mean, you got Loggins and Messina, Kenny Loggins solo. You've got Simon and Garfunkel, Chicago. Fleetwood Mac, of course, is a big one. We should probably talk about at some point. But who are some others that maybe folks wouldn't know about? I mean, it's got to be a laundry list.
Yeah. So when like Seals and Crofts, Sanford and Townsend band, War. He did a couple things for War. Boston, which he loved.
He hung in the studio with War, right?
When they did a record at the Caribou Ranch, and my dad was the equipment manager and studio manager for that whatever record. I forgot what record that was, but I mean you could look it up. It's like I even Googled it and I found that and it's and he took my mom there, and I have a stack of pictures when my dad died that I found of him and my mom at the ranch with the guys in War, like Leo Oscar, and so I sent him a couple pictures and was like, look, I found these old pictures of you. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, like and so War, and then Billy Joel,
right?
Yeah, like kind of anyone and everyone in that kind of genre of music was my dad kind of did something for.
Yeah, every band that I came across seemed to be about the same genre, like that type of rock and roll.
Yeah, like yacht rock type shit.
right, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Did now I remember you said something. This was on the BSB. You said something about being heated about your pops not doing a Van Halen tour or something like this,
or like yeah, well, because when I was
it was Simon and Garfunkel, right?
Right, and I hate listen, I love. There are certain bands that I loved when my dad was like, "Hey, this is who we're going on tour with. This is what we're doing." When I would jump on tours with them, those Simon and Garfunkel tours were like I couldn't figure out that band. Like the good thing was Paul Simon was dating Carrie Fisher, who was Princess Leia, so I was a little kid, so to me that was cool. But that band was the only band that I would ask my dad if I can go to sleep in the lighting rig. Like every other band, I had a seat inside stage. I would help out during the show, but I could not make it through a Simon and Garfunkel show when I was that young. Like I just couldn't.
Yeah, it doesn't click with you. Are you feeling Simon and Garfunkel on any level now, or is there?
Yeah, definitely. I think the older I got, like I was like, oh shit, like they're musically really good. It's still a little like nothing I play totally like, but I understand why they were as big as they were, and I get it.
Right.
But it's just like for me, if I'm playing that kind, like if I listed all the bands my dad worked for, if I put on records, they're the bottom of the list of the records I would choose to put on. Like I always put on, like Kenny always wins. Like Kenny for sure is like. That's the guy in Doobie Brothers, like those kind of bands are the bands that I tend to in Boston, like arena rock kind of.
Right, sure, yeah, I'm into it, and I've only recently gone back to it and gone, dude, I forgot how much this kind of rules. You know who I've grown to really be attached to? I don't remember his name. You probably know it. The drummer from Toto.
Oh yeah, Jeff Porcaro.
Because I'm a drummer, quote unquote. I'm teaching myself, always have. I taught myself how to play everything, and I that is one of those dudes where I watched the video for Rosanna like 9 times because I'm like, how the fuck is he doing that there with that?
Crazy.
He's a lunatic, and it's so subtle in the background.
Yeah.
I know I'm going way fucking out in left field right now.
Oh no, that's like on tours. I always. Until I got a little older, then I was like trying to hang out with the background singer girls. Like I was like, "Hey, what's up?"
Yeah.
But when I was like younger, I always hung out with the drummers. Like Billy, I always hung out with Liberty DeVito. Like with Kenny, I always hung out with Tris. Like I just was always the drummers were who I hung with. Like it just was like I always was, and Jeff Beccaro, like my dad did a couple things with Toto, and like I told a couple times, but like I became friends with the guys in Toto because Steve Lukather's kid became one of my best friends for a couple years, and so I like saw that firsthand. And like Jeff Beccaro is one of the great. Him and Neil Peart and Stuart Copeland from the Police are probably my 3 favorite drummers of all time.
I cannot argue with one of those entries, nor can I argue with the order that you put them in.
Right.
So let's. I mean, I guess let's talk about this. I know a certain amount of things. I'm going to ask you a couple things I literally don't know.
Yeah.
I know you got involved with hip hop and doing what your pops kind of does with nonfiction and such. But what got you into hip hop? What was it that took you from yacht rock to hip hop? Did you?
So it's a funny story. I was in high school and I was a total hair metal dude, like Rat, Motley Crue, fucking Tesla, fucking all those. Like I had long hair, I had hair down to my waist, like. And I would walk to school every day because I had a girlfriend that went to school. So I would try to meet her when she got off the bus, and like, so we'd hang out and, do the high school thing. So I'd walk to school, but it took me exactly, I think it was like 45 minutes to an hour is how long the walk was. And I loved it. Like I loved walking to school. I was in my own head. My brother drove and I just never wanted to get in the car with him. I was like, no, I want my own time. Like we lived together. Like, so I'd bring my, as a Walkman back in the day, and I would bring cassettes. And
I did the same thing, by the way, the exact same thing. My brother would drive to school, and because he's my older brother, and I would walk.
Yeah, like I just loved it. And so one day, it was a Friday, I was in a rush, and I left the house, and I was probably 2 blocks down when I went to grab my Walkman and press play, and I realized I didn't have a tape in there. And then I looked through my backpack, and I forgot all my tapes. So I had nothing to listen to. So I'm in shop class, and funny story is there's this girl that I was really good friends with who's now actually a police officer in the sheriff's department. But, we were in auto shop together, and she was into hip hop. So I was like, oh my God, I have nothing to listen to on my way home. And she was like, I have some I have some tapes you can borrow for the weekend and just bring them back to me Monday. And I was like, yeah, but what is it? She goes, oh, it's hip hop. And, I listened to like Run DMC and, the Fat Boys, whatever was on MTV, I would hear.
Sure.
But I was a metalhead. And, she gave me Low End Theory by Tribe Called Quest.
Oh.
She gave me Second to None's record, and I think NWA Straight Outta Compton, or Ice Cube's Death Certificate, or something like that.
So like the most important hip hop records ever of the time.
And like when I say I didn't know hip hop, I knew I knew what my mom knew of hip hop. Whatever you saw on MTV or whatever they played on Kiss FM. And I put in Low End Theory, and when I tell you, dude, I walked home that Friday and I had all cassettes. It was like right at the age when CDs were just starting to come out. So Friday, I listened to that tape, and then I listened to the other tapes. Saturday morning, I took all the cassettes, and I had every metal cassette you can think of, hundreds. I took them to a place called Moby Disc in the Valley where they would give you cash for it.
Yeah.
They gave me so much cash, I was able to buy a CD player, and I bought the first Cypress Hill, Death Certificate, KRS. I bought like 12 hip hop CDs, and I went back to school, and I was still wearing like metal shirts, but I was only listening to hip hop, and that's just legitimately what happened. Like that walk home, that Low End Theory tape just changed my mind, and I never knew music can sound like that.
I'm right, dog. On a similar note, I absolutely showed up to high school, and this is when I'd gone full skinhead in like my freshman year. Like I was a kid, and I showed up to high school in boots and braces and a Wu-Tang shirt, and the motherfuckers went, "What the fuck is happening right
now?" Yeah. So yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah. Okay, so you get introduced to hip hop via this, and then you graduate high school in the early 90s, right? 94?
Yeah, 92.
92, okay.
Yeah.
So at this point, I think I heard this on the other interview. You went to go to work for Warner Brothers for a few years, stack some money.
Yeah.
And then you go on tour with nonfiction. How does that happen? You end up going on tour with nonfiction. Did you facilitate it? Did you promote it, or?
No, it was kind of one of those things that just kind of like, right place, right time, fell in my lap. Kind of what happened and it was like a decision that changed a lot of things in my life. But I was
Sure.
working at Warner Brothers for, 10, 11 years. And I was working in the TV movie side of it, but I really wanted to get in the music side of it because that was my passion. And just never really happened for me. And when it was time, when, I left Warner Brothers, it was just, but I had enough money to things. And at that point, I was best friends with Danny Boy from House of Pain. And
Right.
so when he was like, I remember I got the nonfiction record and I was like, Danny, this fucking thing is great. And I remember Danny was like, because Bill was a fan of House of Pain, Danny was able, like, through, I don't even know how the channels, but they ended up kind of being cool with each other. And so Danny wrote to Bill, was like, hey, can you send my boy some autographed CDs? And so I got a package one day in the mail with like a bunch of autographed stuff from Bill. And so this was MySpace day. So I wrote him on MySpace, like, hey, dude, like, this is Cody. I got your package. Thank you so much. And so me and him just kind of like started talking. He was really appreciative. And like, because I was friends with Danny, I was already kind of like, I wasn't just a dude, like,
Right.
so if I wrote to him, he always wrote me back. And we started just becoming friends. And then I was going to go on tour with Lords of Brooklyn on the Warped Tour, and
Right.
Caves' little brother Andrew, joined the tour instead. Like, so Caves was like, "Oh, I'm going to take Andrew instead." He was able to do the tour, but I think it was once it was out there in the universe, and like it was kind of, I put it out that I was going to go on this tour.
Right.
Like within a month, like Bill hit me up and was like, "Hey, dude, like, do you want to? Have you ever toured before?" And I was like, "No, but I know what it's like." And he was like, dude, I'm about to do that. We're doing this hieroglyphics tour, us and OC and this group called Boom Bap Project. Do you want to jump on? Like, we'll fly you up to Seattle for the first show and you'll do our merch and kind of learn on the fly. And yeah, and that's basically how it happened.
So you went at you. I mean, you did kind of just roadie shit and merch shit, right?
Yeah, like I would just
okay.
count the merch, sell the merch, and then at the end of it, pay the, whatever, how the
Yeah.
money went away. And it helped, Eclipse was their not only the manager, but their tour manager too. So I would help Eclipse with whatever, like he'd be like, oh, because we and him would do sound check together. Like Bill and Bach and Gore didn't need to do sound check. So just me
Sure.
and Eclipse would be there while I'd set up. So then if, I would help Eclipse do it, put towels out, put the waters out, whatever he needed done. And then, I helped drive, and it was just one of those things. And so we became like, that's like my family. Like, I love those dudes,
Right.
Same with hieroglyphics. Like it was my birthday and we were playing in North Dakota. No, I think, yeah, or Vermont or something. And, Souls of Mischief was one of my favorite groups growing up, and 92 to Infinity
Absolutely.
was like my high school crew. That was like our theme song. And so they brought me up on stage to sing Happy Birthday to me and and play that song while I was on stage. So it was like such a cool moment in my
Oh,
life, so it's
that's
like,
incredible.
those guys are still my brothers. Like, I still talk to Opio and I talk to A Plus. So it's like I made lifelong friends on that tour. And then the next tour, I got home from tour, and then I met my wife, and and then Bill called me up. He's like, "Hey, we're doing this co-headlining tour, Jedi Mind Tricks. Do you want to do that tour with us too?" And it's like for 3 weeks or a month. And so we did that tour, and that's how I met Vinny and Crypt and all those dudes, and Jan
Right.
and everybody from there. So yeah, it just, and the rest is history,
So
really.
that's how that fell in line. Okay. I mean, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Bill to Vin and so on
Right.
and so
So yeah,
forth.
I met Vin basically through Bill and Eclipse and the whole nonfiction thing, and then
Right.
and then me and Vin just clicked, and me and the whole everyone, like I try to be, a nice dude anytime. I'm not that
Yeah.
dude. So I think
Yeah.
people tend to be like cool, and like I kind of said on the other podcast, like I didn't really honestly, like, I was loving hip hop and listening to hip hop, but at that point I wasn't checking for everything. So it's like I had the Jedi album, but I wasn't like a super mark. So it's like I wasn't on tour asking Vinny a million questions. I was talking to him about Philly sports and talking to him about
And
I'm a,
whatever.
my mom died when I was 24, and I'm a super big mom's boy, and so me and him would talk about moms, and like we talked about life, and I think that's what made him and me click. Is I wasn't asking him, like, it was like right before Army of the Pharaohs, but I wasn't sitting there going, so who's in Army of the Pharaohs? Who's this? Like I was like, oh, I
Right.
don't, like, I remember when he told me, he was like, yeah, I'm in this other group called Army of the Pharaohs. I was like, oh, I never heard of it. And I think just that alone, he was like, he dug it. Like, he was like, oh, cool. Like, Like you
Yeah,
don't talk
this is a motherfucker from outside, so I can just talk
right,
to him about normal shit.
right. And I was friends with him because he was a cool dude. I wasn't friends with him because I
Right.
was a fan first. Like I was like, I became like they're Jedi's probably my favorite rap group, and Vinny's one of my favorite MCs, and it's not because like I didn't meet him because of that. Like it's weird how it worked out.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I'm right there with you. Um, so speaking, we talked about Danny Boy a little bit. You met Danny Boy in the '80s, right? When you guys
No,
were.
in the night, like after I graduated high school, like it was
Oh, okay.
right after their first record. And when I tell you, man, I was the biggest house. I'm half Irish, half Greek, and
Dog, I'm Irish
when
too. Like you think I
right,
don't like
so
fucking House of Pain? I lost
when
my shit when I was a
right,
kid.
so when that House of Pain record came out, it was like, oh shit, like I'm like I felt accepted in like the hip hop world, and I was like when I was listening because I was one of those dudes like when I really got into hip hop, I was one of those guys like I'm not just gonna fake it and listen to like Arrested Development and fucking Kid and Play and all these. I'm gonna go back and listen to the old KRS One, Boogie Down Productions, Cold Crush. I learned the history because I didn't ever want to be a faker because I hated when people were like, "Dude, I love metal or glam metal and whatever," and they know Doctor Feelgood. I'd be like, "Yo, man!" Like, so I
I'm
knew to
with you.
play the position. So, um, I really got into hip hop, and so but I loved House of Pain, and my senior year, I had to do a project of like my English paper was like name 3 celebrities that you would like to meet or have dinner with, and it was like Walter Payton of the Chicago Bears, and
Okay.
it was Danny Boy and Tommy Lee from Motley Crue. Like, but Danny Boy was on that list because even though like, and I didn't know anything, but when Danny would rap on those songs, I always gravitated toward that. Honestly, even over Everlast, like I just felt like I was like, yo, I like even with Tribe, Fife. I think Fife is a way better than Q-Tip in my personal opinion.
I agree.
I
No,
always
I 100% agree.
so yeah,
100%.
so I gravitated more towards Danny. I think because I think it was just it was a lot of Everlast, and then which was awesome. Like I loved Everlast, and then but then
Yeah.
you'd hear this other voice, and it was like cool. So I had met Danny through just being in Hollywood and in the club scene, and just kind of like one of those. And I'm like not. I don't know if everyone knows this, but like I've never drank alcohol in my life. I've never smoked a cigarette. I've never done a drug. I don't
Really?
claim straight edge. Straight
Oh,
edge. I
good for
don't do
you.
that. But yeah, just not my. I grew up on the road with my dad. I saw it all. Like so,
Sure.
it wasn't something that made me go, "Ooh, let me try that." Like I was always like, "Oh, that's for old." That's to me, it was for old people. Like I
That's
wasn't fucking with it.
I love that so much that you never
Yeah.
did that. That's
Yeah,
good.
so Danny one day I was turning 20 or 21 and Danny sent me over a bottle of champagne for my birthday and I sent it back and I went up to him to apologize and I was like, "Look, I just don't drink." And he was fucking fascinated. He was like, "Wait a second, what do you do for fun?" And I was like, "Oh, at that time me and my boys were going to Northridge and going ice skating like for fun. Like we were like or go-karting, like we were kids. Like I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we do that." And he was like, "Dude, I used to love to ice skate." He goes, "Do you mind if I join you?" Now yeah, think about it. My whole crew growing up, like House Fan was our favorite group. We saw them at the fucking metal. We saw them at fucking I forgot what the venue was, but in San Bernardino was Cypress Hill and the Hooligans and Funk Dubious. Like we all went to that show, and here's this dude basically like, "Yo, can I join you ice skating?" And I was like, "Yeah," and I kind of was like, "Sure." And he called me up one day, and he was like, "Yo, what are you doing tonight? You going ice skating?" And I was like, "Yeah, actually, we're about to." He goes, "All right, I'll meet you over there. Where are you going?" And I told him, and sure enough, he joined us, and I'd see him around all the time and we just became close. And then I'd see him at shows and I never asked him for anything. I didn't ask to like for no free shit. And then, House Pain broke up and he fell on his hard times. But I get a call one day and my parents were getting divorced. My mom and my stepdad, because I had a stepdad, were getting divorced. They
Right.
moved out of the house and me and my brother were able to keep our house, the house we were living in for about a year before we had to like bounce. And happened to be right then. Danny called me. He was like, "Hey, dude, like I fell on hard times, kind of lost everything. I got to get myself clean. I have nowhere else to go." And he admitted to me, he goes, "Dude, he goes, I've bought cars for people. I've put businesses together for people.
Yep. I know
I've
you.
given hundreds of thousands of dollars to all these people, and no one's answering my call. I have nowhere to go." And I was like, "Yeah, come on. Like, I gotta fucking live in my living room and store all your shit in my house." And that's just kind of how it happened. And then me and him
Yeah.
became super tight.
And that guy's. I mean, since you brought this up, I can't put that guy over enough. Like, I look up to that guy. Being an Irish kid from a fucking rough neighborhood, you know, like, that shit was fucking great. House of Pain was fucking amazing. And he is the mastermind behind the shit.
Right. Yeah.
Now, he's also done some really amazing shit recently. He's got the Delta Bravo Urban Exploration Team.
Yeah.
That shit's cool as fuck. Everybody who's listening, we're not going to get super heavy into it, but go look that up. It's really cool. It's spread throughout the country. And then there's I wanted to ask you about this because you seem to know a little more than some other folks. The Outsider's House that Danny Boy was taking care of. This is the actual Outsider's House.
Yeah, this is the one. If you watch the movie,
and he made a museum of it, or
so it's okay. Basically what he. So the story is he was on tour with when Lakota was their I think one of their first tours, and they were playing in Tulsa, but they had like a weird the way it's set up. They had like 2 or 3 days off, and Danny was sober, and the rest of the band probably wasn't, and he was looking for something to do, and he met a guy in a cab driver and was like, "Hey, what's there to do out here?" And kind of they start talking, and Danny realized, "Oh, Tulsa, why does it sound familiar?" And he was like, "Outsiders was always one of our favorite movies, so we talk about it a lot." And so he went to found the house. The guy was like, "Oh, I know where the house is," and took a picture in front of it, posted it, and it was probably one of his most liked pictures ever. So and he would go back once a year just to kind of see it. He was very fascinated with it, but every time he went down, he noticed the house was getting a little worse for wear. The area was getting worse for wear. Some houses had been torn down, like a block down, and he started getting a little worried. And he basically found out that the lady who owned it lived in Florida, and the person, whoever was living in there now, was basically like squatting. They hadn't paid rent in 8 months. And Danny like made this call. At first he just wanted to buy the house to just make sure no one tore it down. Like that's what his goal was at first. And so he called this lady up, and she, whatever the money was, I forgot, but it was sight unseen. And so he showed up to the house and gave the people living there enough rent to like move out and get themselves a new place for like 2 months. I gave them a stack of cash, was like, get the fuck out, basically. But when Danny notices, the house had fallen, like it was in shambles. Like you put a ball in the middle of the floor, it would roll one side. So basically, had to like tear it down. But when he basically tore it down to the roots and then rebuilt it, but built it up exactly how it was in the movie. And when he first told me, his first thing was he was going to turn it into like an Airbnb or a bed and breakfast. Because in his mind, he's like, dude, how cool would it be to sleep in Pony Boy's room? But I think what happened was he realized, well, like that doesn't really matter because it's not like there's that many scenes in the bedroom. It's mostly in the living room and outside.
That's true.
And through Tulsa, he got to be good friends with S.E. Hinton, who wrote the book. And then he just started finding out people, because in Tulsa, everyone just worked on the movie. So like he was able to he had so much stuff. So he turned it into a museum. And I had gone out there a couple times, like at the very beginning. I haven't seen it completely done yet, but it was close to being done last time I was there. But, I've you would have told me at 14 years old or my high school era, if I'd be sitting down at a table with Danny Boy from House of Pain, C. Thomas Howell from The Outsiders, Ralph Macchio from Karate Kid, and the girl who wrote The Outsiders, I would have been like, get the fuck out of here. Not a chance. Yeah. And there I was. And it was amazing. Like it was. So it's really dope. If you're ever in Tulsa, that's the thing. You got to be in Tulsa to go. But it's sure. Definitely, if you go, like I tell bands when they go on tour, like, hey, if you go through Tulsa, make sure you reach out and find yourself in there because it's nostalgic. And then not far as the drive-in, like all the scenes from the movie, everything's filmed in Tulsa. Nothing was filmed out here.
Right. No, absolutely. That's one of the things that's so cool about it. And there's people in that movie that people forget about. One of my favorite people, musicians, artists on the face of the earth is Tom Waits. And he's in that movie.
Oh, yeah.
And I kind of want to hang out the front door like this, like with my arms on the fucking
exactly.
like Tom Waits. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy when you think about it.
Yeah, it's wild. I wanted to bring light to that, and you pushed that a lot a couple of years ago when he was doing that. So you become friends with Danny Boy. You do the nonfiction tour, so on and so forth. Now, this is something that I was debating whether or not to bring up, but then I heard you touch on it slightly in the other podcast and went, fuck it, I'm just gonna outright ask. La Coca Nostra, did that happen in your living room?
Yeah,
Did
like we
these
were. Yeah, so Lethal. So Danny had found Slain and this big left and this kid Optimist. We call him Opto. And Lethal signed him to a deal, and they were called the Knockouts. And we're gonna put a record out. Like Lethal was putting it out, and it was great. And we were all hanging out, and Danny was like, "Man, like brought up the name La Coca Nostra." And then like like I remember Danny was sitting on we were sitting in my couch, and Danny was like, "Dude, I think I want to start this thing." And I think I want to try to get to be honest with you, La Coca was going to start like Danny was it was going to be one of those like those DJ mixtapes where it's like DJ Eclipse presents, and it's just all his homies
Sure.
rapping. Like at the very beginning, there's even some magazines like Warped magazines from Japan that'll say like I used to be like basically what it was going to be like all his homies were going to rap. Even he was like, dude, I'll even write you a rap. Well, if someone writes rap, you'll do a verse. Like, and I was like, yeah, not me, like whatever. But then he was like, hey, do you think Bill would be down? Because I had just got off the tour with Bill. So, I had called Bill about it, and I was like, Danny wants to know. And Bill's like, yo, if it's for real, like, yeah, dude, I'm down. Like, Bill loved Danny. Bill loved me, like, and Bill just loves to rap. So Bill was like, fuck yeah, let's do it. And then my buddy Kevin Sakota, who used to work at Warner Records, also produced some hip hop beats, and I had given some to Danny, and he had played some for Big Left and Big Left Rappo, and so that's basically how it started. And then they basically Everlast got it and was like, "Yo, like this shit is fire! Like I want to get involved in this." And then once that kind of happened, it took it out of like, "Hey, it's just going to be something for fun and for homies," and it became then it became like a group, like a legit like, "No, we're going to do this," and it dwindled down to like, it was Slain, Slain and Big Left and
right.
Bill, and Everlast and Lethal and Danny. So yeah.
I mean, yeah, and fucking great band too. Like those couple of releases they did are fucking incredible. Some of my
To me,
favorite shit.
that first record goes down in history as one of the best
A
debut
Brand You Can
hip
Trust.
hop record. Yeah, one of the best
Yeah.
debut hip hop records in my opinion last like 20 years.
And I mean, it's funny to me. Like I have a weird relationship with the word supergroup. I don't really like that term. I don't even think it applies here. But I get it, I guess. But yeah, that was a brilliant collaboration of psychotic East Coast and West Coast motherfuckers. Like putting Bill, Everlast, and Slain together is already enough. But you throw on the other elements, it's amazing.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I was I was pretty much in the studio for like pretty much all of it. There was probably a couple things that I was like, oh, when I hear the album, I'm like, I wasn't there for that song, but like for the most part, I was just there like every day, like hanging out because they did it in a short period of time. It wasn't how it was like where like people are just sending beats. Like Bill flew out to LA, like
right.
Slain was here, like everyone was here, so everyone was staying. They were staying at Lethal's house, so like if I wasn't working, I would drive out to work, Lethal's house and chill with them, and because like Bill was at my wedding, like Bill was my brother, so like if he was in town, I was going to see him. So
right on, man. So let's the other podcast that you did recently with Win, which was great, by the way. Big love to your man Win. He already touched on Shamrock Tattoo quite a bit, so I won't go over that. But I am curious. I'm curious what tattoos you have, because for being a guy that has worked in a tattoo shop for 16 years?
Yeah, 16 years, yeah.
You don't have very many. I mean, I know you got your pops on your back. You have a few things. You have some Irish stuff. A couple of things. Why don't you have more tattoos? And because it seems readily accessible. Well, and B, what do you have?
So to answer the first question is, number one, they fucking hurt. Number one. And number two, you got to be like, for me, at least working at Shamrock, we're like a busy shop. There's not a lot of idle downtime, and the artists are working constantly. So for me to get tattooed, I either got to have one of the artists come in early, which ain't happening, or then I have to stay.
Make an appointment.
Right. And so it's like on my days off, I'm married with 2 kids. Like, I'm not trying to like then go back, and I don't, and like anything, like I don't want to spend my off day at my job also, like, and sit there, because then what happens? Yeah, I'm getting tattooed, but then it's busy and someone's asking me now to do something for them, and I'm like, oh, and then so I don't want to stay till 5 in the morning, but like. And so it's just one of those things. But there's times like there's been days where it's been like, yeah, if it's slow and the phone's not ringing, like we have a guy named Big Island Mike that comes in, like I got a bunch of little things from him, like if we're bored, like he did Maddie on my forearm. But a lot of my stuff's from Mark. Like I got a portrait of my mom, my grandparents, my dad, my mom's ex-boyfriend, who's like a father figure to me. Like my whole back with some angel wings.
Yeah.
I got a Wu-Tang Mickey Mouse on my leg. You know, I got a rose for my mom. I got a portrait of Maddie.
Yeah.
I got my kids' names. Yeah, I just got like more random stupid shit, you know.
Yeah. No, it sounds like you got a lot of stuff. It's just it's all under wraps. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's
like
just,
I finally got my. I remember when I got my my Lloyd Dobler John Cusack from Say Anything on my forearm, and Mark was so stoked that I was finally going below the elbow. He's like, "Yeah, let's do it." Plus, also you gotta understand, like I like to get tattooed by Mark. Like that's my dude. So it's like
sure.
he's also booked, and that's one of the main things of my job is to make sure he's booked, and I know how
Right.
much he charges. I know what he gets. So it's like I'm not trying to take money out of his pocket either, and he's not at the tattoo shop just hanging out waiting. So it's like if he comes in, he has an appointment. So I got to pick and choose my kind of battles.
Of course.
And with Mark, it's like with my dad, it was like he had a small one day, and I showed him the picture, and I was like, I think I want to get this portrait. He basically just drew it up one day and then put it off to the side, and like. I remember 2 months later, he had something else kind of small, and he's like, "Hey, you want to do that tattoo right now?" And I was like, "Oh, sure, let's do it." So it's like, that's kind of how it works with me and Mark, at least.
That's fantastic. Well, that's just a good attitude and being raised right. The way you're acting about it, you know what I mean? Like,
Right? Yeah.
if you're treating people the right way. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not trying to take money out of their pocket, make them stay late. I don't want to stay
Right.
late. I'm not trying to make them come early. Like, if it falls in line, it falls in line. I figure, I'm not going nowhere. My arms are still my arms. I have room.
And you also clearly, you said you never did drugs, you never drank alcohol, which is amazing, and I admire you for this. But you clearly don't have an addictive personality, which is not what you do when you're Irish. At
Right.
least not what I've been told. But so you are not addicted to tattoos. You're like, yeah, I can take it or leave it.
Right. Yeah. Like there was a time where it was like 2 years where I didn't get a tattoo. And I remember Mark actually had to come up to me. He was like, "Hey man, don't you think you should get another tattoo this year?" And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." Like, and I love them. Like, and like, I've never regretted any of them, but it's just, I think once for me, it's work too. Like, so I'm in there and my job is to make sure that those guys are tattooing, that everything's set up for them. I'm not trying to take it. And I'm also not trying to take away from customers' time either. And then I just can't relax if the phones are ringing and I know I'm supposed to be doing it,
Of course, which means you have to get tattooed between the hours of 2 and 5 in the morning. And
Right.
at that point, you should be home with your wife and kids. Trust
Exactly.
me,
Yeah. So if I was single,
it's
if I was single and worked there, I'd probably be covered because I'd be just staying there all night. But I had something to go home to every night. So I was like, I gotta bounce, man. I'm trying to get home.
Completely get it. You know what? At this point, I may have some other questions I forgot to get to, but you know what? Fuck it. No, I do have one before I get to my last gimmick. This is 100% serious. From an Irishman from California. Were you serious when you told Vinny Paz you would take him to an Italian restaurant in LA?
Yes.
Really?
Yes. And
remember,
by the way,
I'm a chef, and I understand how Italian folks work, especially those from the East Coast.
Listen, I grew up in the Valley. My palate is not that refined, honestly. And there's there's an Italian restaurant on Ventura called Maselli's. They have the singing waiters and shit. It's like a very famous like Italian spot out here. And they were on tour, and I was like, yo, because that's the thing. It's like you don't want to just eat at the burger joint when the whole crew's out here. You're trying to do some nice. Yeah, it was a mistake. It was whatever. And
but dog, it sounds like a gimmick. It sounds like a gimmick. Like, hey, let's go to the place where they, put candles on the hamburger. And
Yeah,
things
exactly. Well, listen, he likes to talk that it was shitty, but at the time, listen, it wasn't his best meal, but I don't think it was his worst meal ever. Like,
all right, fair
you
enough.
know,
And look, man, I'm not here to stick up for Vinny Paz. I'm just saying, I was curious
Oh,
about the thing.
I also got to tell you a cool story that not a lot of people know. Like, I texted Vinny and I texted Gavin and Pablo about it, but during when I posted all those things about my dad, I posted one of the Michael McDonald
Yeah.
passes, and I wrote like, like I loved being I remember being around when What a Fool Believes was made, and my dad's ex girlfriend, who by the way, my dad has so many ex girlfriends that are like that are in like whatever, and they write to me and they, did
Yeah,
I tell you?
you texted me about this. Yeah.
Yeah, so that song, What a Fool Believes, which by the way is one of my all-time top favorite songs, is I guess Kenny had my dad and my mom in mind when they wrote that song, because my dad's telling Kenny, "Oh, I'll get her back." Like, dude, I'm exactly what she wants, blah, blah, blah. But my mom was hanging out with Kenny's wife, Erin, his ex-wife now, but Erin at the time, and was like, "Nah, dude, I'm good with my kid. Like, yo, man, I'm not trying to go back to that." Like, that's so they wrote this song like "What a Fool Believes In." It's basically about a dude who thinks that he can get this chick back and doesn't realize that nah. So that I remember when that happened, it fucking blew my mind.
Yeah, that's absolutely
Yeah.
incredible. And before I'm going to get into one last thing before I let you go, but I had a question set up for this, but I'm just going to tell you I'm impressed. I'm legitimately impressed at how down to earth and humble you are, coming from the background that you do, and the people that you know, and you behave the way you do.
No,
You
thank
know,
you.
does that make sense? Like
Yeah.
you're a polite and gentlemanly fellow to everybody, no matter who they are. Yeah, I mean, Mark is that way too, from what I understand.
Right. Yeah.
And Vinny is that way, from what I understand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
100%.
But
Yeah.
I'm always happy to know somebody that's from the subculture that I belong to, uh, or somebody that has the ability, I guess, for lack of a better term, to act like a fool and doesn't. Does
Right.
that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
No, I think your parents did a great job raising you, and I appreciate having you in the world. So
Oh, thank you.
let me. I'm going to do a quick. So my podcast is predicated on Terry, my friend Terry, who I do the podcast with. We have had arguments for years. The big one was the Stiff Little Fingers versus the Clash. It's what predicates our entire podcast. The BSB does a version of this, but we also do it as well. Talk to Gavin. He's good with it. But on my show, we call it Versus. On theirs, it's What's Better. Right?
Right.
You ready for a lightning round of What's Better?
Yes.
All right.
Let's do it.
I got a fucking few broad ones to throw at you first. Here we go. Chinese or Japanese food?
Japanese.
You are correct. There is correct answers here. This is
All right,
I
good.
don't play that. Oh no, it's open to interpretation. No, there are wrong answers.
All right.
I'm just kidding. Cake or pie?
Pie.
That is also correct.
Yes.
All right. Rakim or Cool G Rap?
Rakim.
Really?
All
Explain.
day. I will say Rakim's the greatest of all time. Like, number one forever. I love Cool G, but he's not in my top five, to be honest with you. And I know most people do have him
Really?
in his top five, but yeah, like, he's great. He's in my top 10 for sure. But yeah, Rakim is just, I think there was only one, like, the only other person I could put near Rakim would be Jay-Z, just through the longevity and like,
Okay.
and the word flow. But yeah, Rakim, head and above, number one.
I can never argue with anybody that puts Rakim above anybody. If you say he's number one, I'm with you. No matter who
Right.
you are or your reasoning, I'm with you. I do put Cool G above Rakim, believe it or not.
A lot of people do, and
Yeah.
I understand that too. Like I see it, but for me, it's just Rakim.
I
Like to
love it.
me,
I love it.
my greatest hip hop song of all time is "I Ain't No Joke" by Eric B. and Rakim. Like that's if someone was like, play me the one hip hop song that you think is the greatest, it would be that would be the song.
Let me tell you something. If you were to tell me what's your top 5 hip hop songs of all time, that might be number 1, and Cool G Rap might be like behind number 3. For all I know,
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, personally, I think Vinny Paz is my favorite rapper ever. He is. He's my favorite because of what he talks about, his style. I like the punk rock fucking references. I like the hardcore references, the metal things. But I don't even think he would say he's the greatest of all time.
No, he would put Cool G Rap probably.
That is one of the things I look up to about that man in general. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, okay, I'm with you on Rakim. That's fine.
Okay.
I got one more. My wife threw this at me. And it works because of this fucking Italian restaurant question I asked you. Bad pizza. What's better? Pizza Hut or Little Caesars?
Little Caesars.
I agree.
Little Caesars.
Pizza Hut's bad. It's really bad.
Listen, I hadn't had Little Caesars in forever, and one of the guys at our work, this was up last year, he's a younger dude and was like mentioned that he never had Little Caesars, and the guys flipped out. We were like, "What the fuck?" Like, so we made him go get Little Caesars, and we ate it again, and it just brought me back to being like that guy, like in like middle school and high school, like those cheap ass pizzas when you're hanging out with your friends in their garage. Like, so Little Caesars.
$5.
Yeah.
Yeah. You gave him $15 and he brought 30 pizzas back. And
exactly. Like I told you, I do not have a sophisticated palate.
No, look, man, it's all right. Like, I like bad food. I'm a chef and I like bad food. It's fine.
Right. Yeah.
Motherfuckers give bad food a bad name.
Yeah, I love me some Top Ramen, dog. Don't you worry.
Look, man, I'll fucking make that right now. All right. You know what? I think I might have written down other shit, but basically we've just been having a conversation. It's probably about the time to call it quits. I let you know earlier, I only play music that the artists that I want to play, if they don't approve it, I won't play it. So I got the okay from Vinny Paz to play his music. Tell me a Vinny Paz track you want to play.
Oracle.
Oracle?
Yep.
From God of the Serengeti?
Yeah.
My favorite record. What is your favorite Vinny Paz record?
Fuck, dude. That's hard. Because I think all of them have, like, each album has at least 3 songs that I'm like, those are some of the greatest songs I've ever heard. Like,
agreed.
So it can't. It's a Sophie's choice. I can't even. I mean, it depends on the day you catch me, the week you catch me, the month you catch me.
I get it. Because my top pick of 2020 was As Above, So Below. The album title, the album content, all of it blew me away. But gun to my head, I'd probably say God of the Serengeti is my favorite Vinny record. I don't know.
I think that would be probably one of mine, like solo records of his. You know, like it just reminds me. You know, like also because it depends on the album, like where it brings me back. Because when I listen to music, it also brings me back to where I was, who I was, what I was doing, who I was hanging out with.
Super stuff.
Like, so it's one of those things. Like, you know, like there's just certain albums that, you know, like if you put on Nonfiction right now, it brings me back to being in the bus, like, or the van with them and eating Cracker Barrel every morning and like doing all that. Like, you know, it just depends. So yeah, it just depends on where my nostalgia wants to take me.
I love it. Cody, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Brother. My man, I'll talk to you real soon. And
for sure.
Here goes Vinny Paz with Oracle. Thank you, Cody.
Yeah. 1, 2, 1, 2. Come on. Yo, Primo, you crazy for this right here, pop? What shit, whole body. Yeah. I'm a bull in a China shop, watch how the Uzi spit. Who we with, brothers with hammers and they like too legit. I ain't got any time for your foolishness. Raw raps from the same place where the Koofy sits. He the motherfucker always sipping goose and shit. Stomp a rapper out, Timberland boots and shit. The left hand is what I give you the contusions with. The right hand is where I write all of the ruthless shit. Survival of the fit on my little boozy shit. My hands are made of stone, cut from that Medusa shit. Big gold chains, we was on that dookie shit. Still run with the kids I stole the Gucci with. I punch you dead in the face, so fuck the music shit. The guns commando, Hollywood movie shit. Y'all aware, y'all on that Lollapalooza shit. Let the beard grow, alhamdulillah, Sufi shit. Y'all are scared when I step inside the booth for shit. Cause motherfucker sell, roll on some sushi shit. Y'all are cowards, y'all only talk on computer shit. This a Haitian ritual, I'm on my voodoo shit. Yeah.
Find out who's the realest. Vinny. Rockin' not quick.
What I'ma hit you with your motherfucker better duck. That's before the sign of tiger blood, y'all are fake. I let the 4/5 block a robber's cake. Dead Sea overlook the view from inside a grave. The dictionary definition to dominate. Y'all weed Germantown brown, Lord, lots of shake. Fat bull, but my pockets never out of shape. You a bitch, security guards lock the gate. The Louis Vuitton bootleg, Prada fake. I'm trying to make the same money that Madonna make. Eyes never lie, I'm surprised that you not with Jake. Rhymes in one take, record an album in an hour straight. You a pile of waste, I see a sucker and salivate. Cutting motherfuckers off, time to consolidate. 1,000 pounds of weight to force your heart to palpitate. It's Armageddon for you motherfuckers, lock the date. Any bitch I meet means that I'm a copulate. My revolution will be met with Peter Tosh's fate. That's the reason that the God is trying to populate. A connoisseur, I can tell you how the vodka tastes. The 4/5 lift you, send you into outer space. Box cut up Hazzy. Me, Joe Pring. DJ Premier. Headquarters. Philly to New York. All day, baby. It's hard body shit.